The New Mexico desert stretched endlessly under the scorching sun of 1878, its red dust swirling in the harsh wind that carried the acrid smell of smoke and death. 7-year-old Aiyana crouched behind a cluster of prickly pear cacti, her small hands pressed against her ears to block out the screaming that had finally stopped hours ago. The silence was worse than the noise. Her village was gone. The wooden structures that had housed her people for generations now lay in smoldering ruins, their blackened frames reaching toward the cloudless sky like skeletal fingers. Bodies of her family, her friends, everyone she had ever known, were scattered across the ground like broken dolls. The blue-coated soldiers had come at dawn, and by midday there was nothing left but ash and memories. Aiyana's throat burned with thirst, but she dared not move. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "When the wolfmen come, little fox, you run to the sacred rocks and hide until the stars tell you it's safe." But the stars wouldn't come for hours, and she could hear the soldiers' horses still moving in the distance, their hooves clicking against the hard-packed earth like the bones of the dead. The heat was becoming unbearable. Her deerskin dress clung to her small frame, soaked with sweat and fear. Flies buzzed around the carnage, their droning a constant reminder of the horror that surrounded her. She had been hiding for what felt like an eternity, watching vultures circle overhead like dark omens against the blazing sky. A coyote howled in the distance, its mournful cry echoing across the desolate landscape. Aiyana shivered despite the oppressive heat. In Apache tradition, the coyote was a trickster, a harbinger of change. Her grandfather had told her stories of how coyote could take any form, could walk between worlds. She wondered if death would come to her in such a guise. A shadow fell across her hiding place. Aiyana's dark eyes widened as she looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted against the blazing sun. This wasn't a soldier. His clothes were different. A weathered brown hat sat atop his head, and a long duster coat flapped in the desert wind. His face was hidden in shadow, but there was something strange about the way he moved. Too fluid, too graceful for a man. His boots made no sound on the rocky ground. "Easy there, little one," the stranger said, his voice carrying an odd musical quality that seemed to resonate in the air around them, like the sound of wind chimes made of crystal. "I'm not going to hurt you." Aiyana pressed herself deeper into the thorny embrace of the cactus, ignoring the sharp spines that pricked her skin through her deerskin dress. She had been taught to fear all white men, and this one, despite his kind tone, was just another threat in a world that had suddenly become hostile. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The stranger knelt slowly, keeping his hands visible. When he tilted his head up, Aiyana gasped. His eyes were unlike anything she had ever seen, a deep violet that seemed to shimmer with their own light, like the northern lights she had heard the elders describe. They weren't human eyes. They held the depth of eternity, the wisdom of countless stars. "My name is Falling Star," he said, using perfect Apache that surprised her. His accent was flawless, as if he had been born to the language. "And you, child, are not meant to die in this desert today. The wolf men killed everyone," Aiyana whispered, her voice cracking with grief and dehydration. Tears had long since dried on her cheeks, leaving salt trails in the dust that covered her face. "My mother, my father, my baby brother, they're all gone to the spirit world. Why didn't they take me too?" Falling Star's expression grew heavy with sorrow, and for a moment she could see pain flicker across his otherworldly features. "I know, little fox. I saw what happened here. The evil in men's hearts sometimes burns hotter than the desert sun." He extended his hand toward her, palm up. The skin was pale but marked with strange, faint patterns that seemed to shift in the light. "But you survived for a reason. Your story isn't finished yet. The spirits have plans for you." Something in his voice, in those impossible purple eyes, made Aiyana feel safe for the first time since the attack. There was an ancient quality to him, as if he had walked this earth for centuries, seen civilizations rise and fall. Slowly, she reached out and placed her small hand in his. The moment their skin touched, she felt a strange tingling sensation, like touching water during a lightning storm. His hand was warm, but not quite warm in the way a human hand should be. It pulsed with an energy she couldn't understand. "Are you a spirit?" she asked as he helped her stand, her legs shaky from hours of hiding. Falling Star smiled, and for just a moment she could have sworn she saw stars twinkling in his eyes, entire galaxies swirling in those violet depths. "Something like that, little fox. Something like that." He lifted her onto his horse, a magnificent stallion that was the color of midnight, with a mane that seemed to ripple with silver light. The animal's eyes glowed with the same ethereal quality as its master's, and when it breathed, the air around its nostrils shimmered like heat waves. This was no ordinary horse. As they rode away from the ruins of her life, Aiyana looked back one last time at the place where her childhood had ended. The smoke still rose from the ashes, and she memorized every detail, the position of each fallen body, the way the sun cast shadows across the destruction, the smell of death and betrayal that would haunt her dreams for years to come. "Where are we going?" she asked, leaning against the strange cowboy's chest. His heartbeat was different too, slower, more rhythmic, like the pulse of distant drums. "To find you a new family," Falling Star replied, his voice carried away by the desert wind. "One that will teach you to be strong, so that someday you can return to make things right." As they disappeared into the vast expanse of the desert, the horse's hooves leaving no tracks in the sand, neither the child nor the being from another world could have imagined how prophetic those words would prove to be. Behind them, the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky, winking like distant promises of vengeance yet to come. They rode through the night, the mystical stallion's hooves drumming a hypnotic rhythm against the hardpan earth. Aiyana had never traveled so far from her village, and the landscape seemed to transform before her eyes as they journeyed deeper into territories she had only heard about in her grandfather's stories. The desert gave way to rolling hills, dotted with juniper trees, their twisted branches reaching toward a star-filled sky that seemed impossibly vast. Falling Star hadn't spoken for hours, his attention focused on the path ahead. Occasionally he would tilt his head as if listening to sounds that Aiyana couldn't hear, whispers carried on the wind, messages from realms beyond her understanding. His violet eyes scanned the horizon with an alertness that suggested he was watching for more than just human threats. "Are there others like you?" Aiyana asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Her voice was small against the enormity of the night, but she needed to understand who her rescuer truly was. "In this world, very few," Falling Star replied, his hand tightening slightly on the reins. "My people. We don't often involve ourselves in the affairs of Earth. We observe, we study, but we rarely interfere." He paused, and she could feel him looking down at her. "But sometimes even we cannot stand by and watch innocence be destroyed." The stallion snorted, and a cloud of luminescent mist escaped its nostrils, dissipating quickly in the cool night air. Aiyana had stopped questioning the impossible things she was witnessing. In the space of a single day, her entire understanding of the world had shattered and reformed around mysteries that her people's legends had only hinted at. "My grandmother told me stories of star people," she whispered. "She said they came down from the sky in the time before time, when the world was young and magic still walked openly among men." "Your grandmother was wise," Falling Star said. "The Apache have long memories. They remember what others have forgotten, that the boundaries between worlds are thinner than most believe." As dawn approached, they crested a ridge overlooking a hidden valley where a small Apache settlement nestled beside a clear running stream. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and Aiyana could see women tending to morning chores while children played near the water's edge. It was a scene of peaceful normalcy that made her heart ache with longing for what she had lost. "The Mescalero," Falling Star explained. "They escaped the worst of the cavalry's attention by hiding in these remote canyons. Their leader, Chief White Eagle, is a man of vision. He understands that survival sometimes requires accepting help from unexpected sources." They descended into the valley as the sun painted the eastern peaks in shades of gold and crimson. The first person to notice their approach was a young warrior who had been watering his horse at the stream. His hand moved instinctively to his weapon when he saw the strange rider, but something about Falling Star's presence made him pause. The man's eyes widened as he took in the otherworldly stallion and its mysterious rider. "Grey Wolf," Falling Star called out in Apache, his voice carrying easily across the water. "Tell White Eagle that the Star Walker has come, bringing a daughter of the Chiricahua who needs shelter." Grey Wolf stood frozen for a moment, clearly recognizing Falling Star despite the impossibility of it. He nodded once sharply and ran toward the largest teepee at the center of the encampment. Within minutes, people began emerging from their dwellings, gathering in a loose circle around the arriving visitors. Chief White Eagle appeared, a man of perhaps 50 winters with silver-streaked hair braided with eagle feathers. His weathered face bore the marks of a life spent fighting for his people's survival, but his eyes held a shrewd intelligence that missed nothing. When his gaze fell upon Falling Star, a flicker of recognition passed across his features, followed by something that might have been reverence. "Star Walker," White Eagle said formally, inclining his head in a gesture of respect. "It has been many seasons since you walked among us. What brings you to our hidden valley?" Falling Star dismounted with fluid grace, then lifted Aiyana down from the horse. She felt suddenly small and vulnerable, surrounded by so many strangers, but the chief's kind eyes reminded her of her own grandfather, and some of her fear began to ebb. "This child is Aiyana of the Chiricahua," Falling Star announced, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. "Her people were massacred by cavalry forces yesterday morning. She is alone in the world and needs a family to call her own." White Eagle knelt before Aiyana, studying her face with compassionate eyes. "I knew your grandfather, little one," he said gently. "Running Bear was my cousin, a great warrior and wise man. His blood flows in your veins, and that makes you family to us." Tears that Aiyana thought had been exhausted began flowing again, but these were different, tears of relief rather than despair. White Eagle opened his arms and she fell into his embrace, finally allowing herself to grieve properly for the first time since the attack. "She will be raised as our own," White Eagle promised, looking up at Falling Star over Aiyana's head. "But I sense there is more to this than simple rescue." Falling Star nodded gravely. "The darkness that destroyed her village is spreading. What happened to the Chiricahua is only the beginning. Your people will need allies in the trials ahead, allies from realms beyond this earth." "You speak of war," White Eagle observed. "I speak of survival," Falling Star corrected. "And sometimes, survival requires embracing powers that our ancestors only dreamed of." He looked down at Aiyana, who was listening intently despite her tears. "This child has a destiny that reaches far beyond these desert lands. Train her well, White Eagle. Teach her the old ways and the new. The time will come when she must choose between the path of vengeance and the path of justice, and that choice will echo across both worlds." The mysterious cowboy mounted his ethereal stallion once more, preparing to depart. Aiyana broke free from White Eagle's embrace and ran to his side. "Will I see you again?" she asked, looking up at those impossible violet eyes. Falling Star smiled, and for a moment, starlight danced across his features. "When the time is right, little fox, when you have grown into the woman you were meant to become, our paths will cross again." He reached into his coat and withdrew a small pendant, a piece of metal that seemed to contain swirling galaxies within its surface. "Keep this safe. When the moment comes for your true journey to begin, it will call to its brothers among the stars." As he rode away into the morning light, his form seemed to shimmer and fade, until Aiyana could no longer tell where the man ended and the desert mirage began. But the pendant in her hand was solid and real, warm with an inner fire that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. White Eagle placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Come, daughter," he said, "let us find you a place by our fire." 15 years had transformed the Hidden Valley into something more than a simple Apache settlement. Under Chief White Eagle's guidance, it had become a sanctuary where the old ways merged with knowledge from beyond the stars. Aiyana, now 22, stood atop the sacred mesa overlooking their home, her long black hair braided with feathers and small metal beads that caught the morning light like captured stars. The pendant Falling Star had given her hung against her chest, its surface shimmering with an inner light that had grown stronger over the years. Sometimes late at night, she could swear she heard whispers coming from within it, voices speaking in languages that existed before human speech, promising power and purpose she was only beginning to understand. "You're thinking of him again," came a familiar voice behind her. Aiyana turned to see Moonshadow approaching. Her closest friend and the daughter White Eagle had never had by blood. They had grown up as sisters, training together in the arts of war and survival that their people needed to master in these dangerous times. Moonshadow's own transformation had been remarkable, from a shy 12-year-old to a fierce warrior whose reputation had spread even to other tribes. "The pendant has been warm for 3 days," Aiyana admitted, touching the alien artifact. "Something is happening. I can feel it in the air, in the way the horses grow restless, in how the coyotes sing at night." Moonshadow nodded knowingly. Over the years, the entire tribe had learned to read the signs that accompanied the otherworldly forces that seemed drawn to their valley. Strange lights in the sky, animals behaving unusually, and dreams that felt more like memories of futures yet to come. "The scouts returned this morning," Moonshadow said, her expression growing serious. "The cavalry has built a new fort 50 miles east of here. They're calling it Fort Retribution, and they're gathering men and supplies for something big." Aiyana's jaw tightened. She had spent years hearing reports of the ongoing violence against her people. Villages burned, families scattered, children stolen and forced into white schools where they were beaten for speaking their native tongues. The rage that had simmered in her heart since that terrible day 15 years ago had never truly cooled, only transformed into something more focused, more dangerous. "White Eagle wants to see you," Moonshadow added, "in the sacred cave." The sacred cave lay deep within the mesa, its walls covered with ancient petroglyphs that seemed to move in the flickering light of torches. But these weren't all the work of ancient Apache hands. Over the years, new symbols had appeared, strange geometric patterns and star maps that hurt the eyes to look at directly. White Eagle sat in meditation before the newest addition to the cave art, a spiral galaxy rendered in impossible detail, as if someone had pressed the cosmos itself into the stone. "The Starwalker has been visiting our dreams," White Eagle said without opening his eyes. "Not just mine, but many of the elders. He says the time of preparation is ending." Aiyana knelt beside her adopted father, the pendant growing almost hot against her skin. "What did he tell you?" "That the soldiers at Fort Retribution have made contact with something they don't understand," White Eagle replied, his weathered face grave with concern. "They've found one of the star metal deposits the Starwalker warned us about years ago. They're trying to forge weapons from it, weapons that could destroy not just our people, but tear holes between worlds." The implications hit Aiyana like a physical blow. She had learned much about Falling Star's people during their occasional nocturnal visits to the valley. They were refugees, survivors of a great war that had consumed their home among distant stars. They had come to Earth seeking peace, but some among them had never given up their warrior ways. If the cavalry inadvertently opened a gateway, "The Dark Ones would come," Aiyana whispered, remembering the stories Falling Star had shared during their brief encounters over the years. "The ones who destroyed his world." "Yes," White Eagle confirmed, "and this world would burn as theirs did." A new voice echoed through the cave, musical and familiar, "which is why the time for hiding is over." Falling Star emerged from the shadows as if he had been part of them all along. He looked exactly as he had 15 years ago, ageless, otherworldly, his violet eyes burning with purpose. But there was something different about him now, a urgency that hadn't been there before. "You've grown strong, little fox," he said, studying Aiyana with approval. "Strong enough for what must come next." "You're talking about war," Aiyana said, rising to face him. "The kind of war that will draw everyone into it. Apache, cavalry, your people, and whatever darkness follows them." "I'm talking about survival," Falling Star corrected, echoing his words from long ago. "The soldiers at Fort Retribution have 3 days before their experiments reach critical mass. After that, the barriers between worlds will weaken enough for my enemies to break through." He reached into his coat and withdrew a bundle wrapped in dark cloth. When he unfolded it, Aiyana gasped. Inside lay weapons unlike anything she had ever seen, blades that seemed forged from solidified starlight, devices that hummed with barely contained energy, and armor that shifted like liquid metal while maintaining its protective form. "These belong to warriors of my people," Falling Star explained. "They were crafted to fight beings of immense power, creatures that feed on fear and hatred. The pendant you wear is the key that will allow you to use them." Aiyana felt the pendant pulse in response to the alien weapons, and suddenly she understood. Everything that had happened, her survival, her rescue, her years of training, it had all been preparation for this moment. "You're asking me to become something more than human," she said. "I'm asking you to become a bridge between worlds," Falling Star replied. "To gather warriors from both races who understand that our survival depends on working together. The Apache know this land, know how to fight against impossible odds. My people know the true nature of our enemies. Together, we might have a chance." White Eagle stood, his old bones creaking with the effort. "How many warriors will you need?" Falling Star's smile was grim. "All of them who are willing to stand between Earth and annihilation, because in 3 days, little fox, you return to make things right, not just for your murdered family, but for both our peoples." The pendant against Aiyana's chest blazed with sudden fire, and in its light, she saw her reflection in the polished alien blade, not as the abandoned child she had been, or even as the Apache warrior she had become, but as something new entirely, something the world had never seen before, and desperately needed now. The time of hiding was indeed over. The time of the Star Warrior had begun. The transformation was unlike anything Aiyana had ever experienced. As she donned the alien armor, it flowed over her skin like liquid mercury before solidifying into plates of impossible strength. The star-forged blade sang in her hand, its edge cutting through reality itself, leaving trails of light in the air. But it was the knowledge that flooded her mind that truly changed everything. Battle strategies from a dozen worlds, tactical awareness that spanned multiple dimensions, and the terrible understanding of what they were truly facing. 2 days had passed since Falling Star's revelation, and the Hidden Valley bustled with preparation unlike anything in its history. Warriors from 7 Apache bands had answered White Eagle's call, arriving through secret mountain passes with grim determination etched on their faces. They came not just as Apache, but as defenders of their world. But they were not alone. As night fell on the second day, the sky above the valley filled with lights that were not stars. Ships descended like silver teardrops, their hulls reflecting the firelight from the camp below. Falling Star's people had come, not many, perhaps 30 warriors in total, but each one a veteran of the cosmic war that had destroyed their homeland. Aiyana stood at the center of the gathering as 2 very different groups of warriors faced each other across the firelit space. The tension was palpable. Centuries of human myths about sky gods and star demons, mixing with alien uncertainty about these primitive but fierce Earth defenders. "I know this is difficult for all of you," Aiyana began, her voice carrying clearly in the desert air. The alien armor translated her words simultaneously into the musical language of Falling Star's people, creating an eerie harmony. "We are strangers to each other, beings from different worlds with different ways of fighting, different ways of dying." She walked between the groups, the star blade at her side casting ethereal light across both Apache and alien faces. "But we share something more important than our differences. We have all lost our homes to the same darkness. The beings that destroyed my village 15 years ago, that scattered my people across this land, they serve the same masters that consumed the star realm of our alien allies." An Apache warrior named Red Hawk stepped forward, his weathered face skeptical. "How do we know these sky people won't turn on us once the battle is won? How do we know this isn't just another trick by the white man's government?" Before Aiyana could answer, one of the alien warriors approached. Unlike Falling Star, this being had chosen to maintain more of their natural form, tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that held the depth of nebulae. When they spoke, their voice was like wind through crystal formations. "Because we are dying," the alien said simply. "My name is Void Singer, and I was a guardian of the crystal moons before they were devoured. There are perhaps 1,000 of my people left in all the galaxy. We came to your world not as conquerors, but as refugees seeking a home where the Shadow Fleet cannot follow." "The Shadow Fleet?" Moonshadow asked from beside Aiyana. Falling Star stepped into the circle of firelight. "The beings that the soldiers at Fort Retribution are about to accidentally summon. They are not alive as we understand life. They are hunger-given form, entities that consume not just flesh and blood, but hope itself. They turn worlds into empty husks, devoid of all warmth and light." He gestured toward the alien weapons stacked nearby. "These tools were forged in the last days of my homeworld, created specifically to fight creatures that exist partially outside normal space and time. Without them, conventional weapons are useless." Grey Wolf, the warrior who had first spotted Falling Star 15 years ago, studied the alien devices with professional interest. "And you believe this Apache girl can unite our forces? Use these star weapons to lead us against enemies from Nightmare?" "I believe," said a new voice from the edge of the gathering, "that she is the only hope either of our peoples have." Chief White Eagle emerged from the shadows, but he was not alone. With him came figures that made even the battle-hardened warriors step back in amazement. Other humans, but ones who bore the unmistakable signs of long contact with otherworldly forces. Their eyes held depths that spoke of knowledge beyond earthly understanding, and strange symbols were tattooed along their arms in ink that seemed to move in the firelight. "The star touched," Falling Star acknowledged with a bow of respect. "I wondered if any of your order still survived." White Eagle's expression was grave. "We have been preparing for this day for generations, ever since the first skyships fell to Earth, carrying refugees from the destroyed worlds. We are humans who have learned to bridge the gap between species, to serve as translators, not just of language, but of hope." One of the star touched, an elderly woman whose silver hair was braided with metallic threads that pulsed with soft light, approached Aiyana. "We have been watching you, child of two worlds. Your heart burns with the fire of justice, not vengeance. That is why the Starblade chose you, why the armor fits your soul as well as your body." But I don't know how to lead an army like this, Aiyana admitted, her confidence wavering for the first time. Apache and aliens, humans touched by otherworldly knowledge, weapons I barely understand. How can I possibly coordinate a battle against creatures from beyond the stars? The elderly star-touched woman smiled and placed a weathered hand on Aiyana's shoulder. Because you are not trying to make us all the same. You understand that our strength lies in our differences, in the way Apache stealth can complement alien technology, in how human courage can inspire otherworldly wisdom. Void Singer approached, carrying a device that looked like a crystalline flower made of living metal. This is a unity matrix, they explained. It will allow all of our forces to share tactical information instantly during battle, to coordinate as if we were a single organism with many bodies. And it requires someone who is trusted by all factions to serve as the central node, Falling Star added, looking at Aiyana meaningfully. As if in response to the moment, the pendant against Aiyana's chest blazed with sudden brilliance, and every warrior in the valley, human and alien alike, felt a pulse of shared purpose flow through them. For just an instant, they were all connected, all part of something greater than their individual fears and prejudices. Fort Retribution's experiments reach critical mass at dawn, Falling Star announced. We move out in 1 hour. As the warriors began their final preparations, Aiyana found herself standing alone for a moment, looking up at the star-filled sky. Tomorrow would bring either victory or the end of everything she loved. But tonight, for the first time since she was 7 years old, she felt like she had found her place in the universe. The army of 2 worlds was ready. The Star Warrior would lead them into battle against the darkness that had haunted both their peoples. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient evils stirred in anticipation of their first taste of Earth's light. The pre-dawn darkness around Fort Retribution crackled with unnatural energy. From her position on the ridge overlooking the military compound, Aiyana could see the source of the disturbance, a massive crystalline structure that the soldiers had built around their star metal. Discovery. Lightning arced between its faceted surfaces, and the air itself seemed to ripple with dimensional instability. They have no idea what they've done, Void Singer whispered beside her, their form barely visible despite the alien armor's advanced optics. That resonance frequency, they've created a beacon that will draw the shadow fleet like moths to flame. Through the unity matrix, Aiyana felt the positions of her entire army spread across the desert landscape. 50 Apache warriors moved like ghosts through the scrub brush and rocky outcroppings, their knowledge of desert warfare complemented by alien cloaking technology. 30 Star Warriors floated in their vessels above the cloud line, weapons charged and ready. The Star-Touched had positioned themselves at key mystical convergence points, preparing to channel otherworldly energies that could either save or damn them all. The first rift is opening, Falling Star's voice echoed through the matrix from his position on the southern approach. I can smell the void between worlds. We have minutes, not hours. Aiyana activated the Starblade, its edge blazing with captured starlight that cut through the darkness like hope itself. The alien armor responded to her heartbeat, shifting to optimize for the battle ahead. Around her neck, the pendant that had guided her path for 15 years pulsed in rhythm with the dimensional disturbance. All units, she spoke into the unity matrix, her words reaching every warrior simultaneously. Remember, we're not just fighting for our peoples or our worlds. We're fighting for the right of light to exist in a universe that the Shadow Fleet would drain of all warmth and hope. The crystalline structure at the fort's center suddenly blazed with blinding intensity, and reality tore open like fabric. Through the dimensional rift came the advanced scouts of the Shadow Fleet, beings of living darkness that moved like oil given malevolent consciousness. Their touch withered the desert plants instantly, and the temperature dropped 20 degrees in as many seconds. Apache units, initiate harassment pattern Theta, Aiyana commanded, launching herself down the ridge with impossible speed. The alien armor enhanced her natural agility, turning her into a silver blur racing across the desert floor. The battle that followed would be spoken of in whispered legends for generations to come. Apache warriors materialized from the shadows like avenging spirits, their traditional weapons enhanced with star metal edges that could cut through shadow flesh. They struck fast and vanished, their guerrilla tactics perfectly suited to fighting creatures that expected conventional military responses. Above, the alien vessels dove through the clouds like silver eagles, their weapons painting the sky with beams of pure cosmic force. But for every Shadow Scout they destroyed, Two more poured through the ever-widening rift. Aiyana reached the fort's perimeter, just as the cavalry troops inside realized they were under attack by forces beyond their understanding. Colonel Morrison, the fort's commander, stood transfixed before the dimensional rift as creatures from his worst nightmares spilled into his world. "Shut it down!" Aiyana shouted as she vaulted over the fort's wall, the star blade carving through shadow creatures like they were made of smoke. "Whatever you're powering that crystal with, shut it down now." Morrison's face was pale with terror, but military discipline held. "We can't! The process is self-sustaining now. God help us! What have we unleashed?" Through the unity matrix, Aiyana felt Void Singer's sudden alarm. "Aiyana, the main force is coming through. We need to collapse that rift before—" The communication cut off as something vast began to emerge from the dimensional tear. This was no mere scout. This was a shadow dreadnought, a creature the size of a mountain that fed on entire worlds. Its presence alone began to drain color from reality, turning the desert landscape into a black and white photograph of despair. "Star-touched," Aiyana called out through the matrix. "Channel everything you have into the convergence points. We need to destabilize their anchor." The elderly woman who had blessed her mission appeared at the fort's center, her silver hair now blazing with otherworldly fire. Around her, the other Star-touched began a chant in languages that predated human civilization, their voices harmonizing with frequencies that made the dreadnought pause in its emergence. But it wasn't enough. The creature's tendrils of living shadow reached toward the chanting humans, ready to drain them of life and hope. That's when Aiyana understood what she had to do. She placed her hand on the pendant, feeling its warmth spread through the alien armor and into the star blade itself. "Falling star," she called through the matrix. "I need you to trust me one more time." "Little fox, what are you planning?" "Something my grandfather used to tell me about," she replied, sprinting toward the dimensional rift. "He said that sometimes, to close a door, you have to become the door yourself." The pendant blazed with brilliant light as she approached the crystalline structure. Through the unity matrix, she felt every warrior's understanding of what she intended and their absolute refusal to let her sacrifice herself alone. "We are one people now," Red Hawk's voice came through the connection. "If the Star Warrior falls, we all fall together. And if she rises," Void Singer added, "we rise with her." The Apache warriors abandoned stealth, charging into the fort with war cries that echoed across dimensions. The alien vessels dove down to provide close support, their crews willing to die rather than retreat. The Star-touched channeled power that burned their mortal forms but held the dimensional fabric stable. Aiyana reached the crystal and placed both hands on its surface. The star blade dissolved into pure energy, flowing into the alien structure along with the power of her pendant. Through the unity matrix, she felt the strength of every warrior flow into her. Apache courage, alien wisdom, human determination, all focused into a single point of blazing defiance. "You want Earth?" she called out to the shadow dreadnought as power beyond imagination coursed through her. "You'll have to go through all of us first." The explosion of light that followed could be seen from 3 territories away. When it faded, the dimensional rift was gone. The shadow creatures were destroyed and Fort Retribution lay in ruins. But standing in the center of the devastation, surrounded by warriors from 2 worlds who had chosen to stand together, Aiyana smiled. The pendant around her neck had become a simple piece of metal, its otherworldly power spent. But the bonds forged in that desperate battle remained. Apache and alien, human and star-touched, all united in the knowledge that they had saved not just Earth, but the very concept of hope itself. Colonel Morrison, his uniform singed and his worldview shattered, approached the unlikely army. "What happens now?" he asked. Aiyana looked around at her companions, some human, some alien, all family now. "Now we rebuild," she said. "Both worlds, together, because that's what families do." 15 years after a frightened Apache girl had been saved by an alien cowboy, the Star Warrior had kept her promise. She had returned with an army, and she had made things right, not through vengeance, but through the kind of justice that builds rather than destroys. As the sun rose over the New Mexico desert, it shone on a world forever changed, where the children of Earth and the refugees of distant stars would learn to share the same sky.